Why cheap electric cars are no longer selling. The end of the low-price subsidy era. For a long time, many people have had a misconception about the Chinese auto market. They believed that as long as the price was low enough, there was no need to worry about selling cars. This idea is not hard to understand. There was a period in China's auto market when low-end SUVs grew wildly, and many automakers made huge profits simply by manufacturing SUVs. But times have changed, and that logic of selling cars has gone forever along with those days. Now, in the new energy vehicle era, especially in 2026 when the auto market has entered the final knockout stage, the phenomenon has emerged that cheap electric cars are actually not selling well. Data doesn't lie. From January to April 2026, sales of new energy vehicles priced below 80,000 yuan fell by nearly 50%, and retail sales of pure electric microcars plunged by almost 70% year-on-year. Even the Wuling Hongguang MINIEV, which once dominated the micro EV sales charts, is struggling. Models like the Cherry QQ ice cream saw monthly sales drop to around 500 units, a stark contrast to last year when tens of thousands were sold per month. The downward trend is plain to see. While these low-cost EVs, which account for a large share of sales, are cooling down, the domestic auto market is also declining. From January to April 2026, cumulative retail sales of new energy passenger vehicles in China reached 2.758 million units, a double-digit year-on-year decline. The industry often talks about a cooling market, but after numerous visits to frontline dealerships, I found that it's not that no one is buying new energy vehicles. Rather, those cheap commuter EVs that once relied on policy dividends to stay alive and lacked core product competitiveness are now failing in the market. The purchase bill for cheap EVs has changed. On a macro level, the core trigger for the decline of low-cost EVs was the new purchase tax policy that took effect on January 1, 2026. Previously, purchase tax for new energy vehicles was fully exempt. The new policy applies a reduced tax rate of 5%, half of the standard rate, while the purchase tax reduction cap was slashed from 30,000 yuan to 15,000 yuan. Coupled with the restructuring of annual national subsidy rules, scrappage and trade-in subsidies have been drastically reduced. For new energy vehicles priced below 166,700 yuan, subsidies have dropped by anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000 yuan compared to 2025, directly raising user costs. After these adjustments, buying a 50,000 yuan micro EV adds over 2,000 yuan in tax costs. A 100,000 yuan family NEV adds over 4,000 yuan. And a 200,000 yuan mainstream NEV increases taxes by nearly 10,000 yuan. Of course, for mid to high-end buyers, a few thousand yuan in tax fluctuations barely changes their purchasing decision. But for essential commuter users below 80,000 yuan, sensitivity to purchase cost is extremely high. These users are mostly in lower-tier markets with rigid demand, and they exercise strict budget control, as the money for a car mostly comes from fixed household expenses, leaving little room for premium flexibility. As the bill grows piece by piece, it undoubtedly sways their final decision to buy. Through visits to car dealers in third and fourth-tier cities in Shandong and Henan, I learned that many potential buyers gave up on purchasing a car simply because of the extra 2,000 yuan in tax. In other words, the past sales volume of low-cost EVs was never driven by product strength, but by the dual dividends of purchase tax exemption and national subsidies that lowered the on-the-road price and passively boosted volume. Once those policy dividends were withdrawn, the price advantage instantly vanished, making the sales decline inevitable. Of course, the withdrawal of a single policy isn't enough to cause a halving of sales. The pre-year-end demand overdraft and price wars also contributed to crushing low-cost NEVs. At the end of 2025, the industry hyped the last chance before subsidy cuts, prompting essential users in counties and townships to rush to buy cars ahead of time, draining demand for commuter vehicles. In the first quarter of 2026, several car salespeople told me, at the end of last year, their dealerships were flooded with customers for micro EVs, with order backlogs exceeding 2 weeks. When the new year began, natural foot traffic plunged, and the market fell into a demand vacuum. Meanwhile, traditional automakers cleared inventory, inadvertently attacking the low-price territory of new energy vehicles. Media reports indicated that a certain Japanese A-class family sedan's barebones transaction price fell below 52,000 yuan, while mainstream B-class fuel cars like the Magotan and Accord offered combined discounts of 30,000 to 50,000 yuan, significantly lowering the entry threshold for traditional family fuel vehicles to ASA result. With the same budget, buyers could get an entry-level fuel sedan, avoiding the shortcomings of charging and range, while enjoying more mature overall vehicle quality and a longer service life. Many consumers quickly tilted their purchase preferences toward fuel cars. The pain of price difference is fragmenting the market, as mentioned. Micro EV buyers under 80,000 yuan are highly price-sensitive, making their final decision solely based on the on-the-road price and purchase subsidies, while paying little attention to body structure, battery stability, chassis tuning, or smart features. In the past, automakers relied on low-cost LFP small-capacity batteries, simplified body manufacturing processes, and reduced after-sales support to cut production costs, and leveraged policy subsidies to create a price advantage and achieve volume at scale. But when policy costs rose, automakers fell into a dilemma: raise prices along with the tax hike and lose customers, or keep prices unchanged and truly sell at a loss. The net profit per micro EV was already less than 1,000 yuan, leaving almost no room for price concessions. Under this vicious cycle, model discontinuations, dealership downsizing, and channel contractions occurred one after another. On the other hand, buyers of mid to high-end NEVs priced at 150,000 yuan and above have a completely different consumption logic. They prioritize core product attributes such as vehicle range, intelligent driving experience, overall quality, brand service, and resale value. In comparison, tax fluctuations of a few thousand yuan are secondary or even irrelevant. Let's do the math. In 2026, the purchase tax for NEVs shifted from full exemption to a reduced half-rate levy, with the maximum tax reduction capped at 15,000 yuan. For a 300,000 yuan model, the previous full exemption could have saved about 26,500 yuan, now only 15,000 yuan, a difference of about 11,500 yuan. Even compared to a fuel car, which also gets a maximum 15,000 yuan tax reduction, the advantage is not significant for people with such high purchasing power. For vehicles above 250,000 yuan, the tax subsidy accounts for a small proportion of the vehicle price and is unlikely to be a core decision factor. Survey data shows that among NEV buyers above 250,000 yuan, only 10% pay attention to the purchase tax subsidy. This also explains the current market pattern of cold to hot. The sub-80 yuan market has seen sales nearly halved. Mid-range models at 150,000 to 200,000 yuan dipped slightly, while premium models above 250,000 yuan are growing against the trend, escaping price wars and building moats with technology and brand behind this phenomenon. As the industry knockout round begins, the low-price dividend business model is becoming unsustainable. For a long time, the industry defined micro-EVs like the Wuling Hongguang MINIEV as essential god cars for lower-tier markets, but overlooked that to some extent these models are phased products born out of policy. Automakers relied on subsidy dividends to scale up, boost sales, and earn new energy credits, while abandoning core product aspects such as chassis R&D, smart cockpit upgrades, and battery safety optimization, using low prices to grab market share. This volume-driven business model failed in 2026, but going forward in the NEV race, the era of low-price cutthroat competition is coming to an end, and a new era of competition where strength reigns has officially begun. Early last month, the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers and Hejun Consulting released the 2025 China Automotive Aftermarket Annual Development Report. Although mostly about the aftermarket, it included a very interesting statistic. The average age of traditional internal combustion engine passenger vehicles has reached 8.2 years, with nearly 60% of vehicles being over 7 years old. Meanwhile, the average age of new energy passenger vehicles is only 1.8 years, with vehicles aged 1 to 3 years accounting for up to 90%. That I believe many people seeing this latter data might immediately think, are NEV owners really changing cars that frequently, swapping every 1.8 years on average? A closer look reveals that this striking figure does make some sense. China's new energy vehicles started around 2008, entered mainstream public view around 2015, exploded around 2021, and by 2025 retail penetration exceeded 60%. Over this decade-long span, development was by no means slow. Moreover, in recent years, if you notice the older cars around 5 years old on the road, the general impression is that there are more gasoline cars than NEVs. Those truly old NEVs, like the first-generation EVs, registered between 2016 and 2018. Where are they today? They are likely either in the ride-hailing market or have truly exited the market. But fuel cars are different. Compared to early EVs with significant battery degradation, expiring warranties, and uneconomical repair costs, as long as a fuel car passes annual inspections, is easy to repair, and is cheap as a used car, it continues to commute daily. This is the biggest difference, but it is not the sole reason for the low average age of NEVs. When cars become oversized electronics, that said, many analysis reports have noted that NEV owners do tend to replace their cars more frequently than fuel car owners. The Automotive Trade-in Consumer Insight white paper released by Dongchedi and China Automotive Information Technology Company Limited shows that 70% of fuel car users have a replacement cycle of over 5 years, with 33% in the 5 to 8 year bracket and 37% over 8 years. In contrast, 90% of NEV users replace their vehicles within 5 years. Data previously released by the China Automobile Dealers Association also indicates that the replacement cycle for traditional fuel cars is 6 to 8 years, while for NEVs, it is only 3 to 5 years. As many comments suggest, cars are taking on a fast-moving consumer goods trend, especially among young people. where the pursuit of new tech experiences shortens the willingness to hold on to a vehicle. On the surface, this gap appears to be due to NEV owners' penchant for the new. But in reality, the transition from fuel cars to the NEV era has changed the underlying logic of the auto industry. Consequently, consumers born in the tech age have also shifted their car-buying mindset. In the fuel car era, a vehicle's core competitiveness lay in the three major components: engine, chassis, and transmission, typical mechanical industrial products. Their iteration followed the accumulation cycles of physical laws and engineering experience, often requiring 5 to 8 years for a truly meaningful generational update. That is why a fuel car can be driven for 10 years without feeling noticeably outdated technologically, as long as it has low fuel consumption and is durable. The difference from a new model is merely in design and features. This experience without a generational leap is the reason for the generally higher average age of fuel cars. But NEVs are completely different. The three major components have become the battery, motor, and electronic control, plus chips and the infotainment system, which is why consumers call them oversized electronics. Electronics inherently have a rule: fast iteration, with upgrades delivering an experience far superior to existing products. Similarly, the replacement cycle for NEVs has been compressed from the 5 to 7 years of traditional fuel cars to 18 to 24 months. McKinsey data shows that emerging Chinese automakers have shortened the cycle from proof of concept to mass production to about 24 months, twice as fast as traditional automakers' 40 to 50 months. And some new EV brands can go from project launch to mass production in just 18 months. According to incomplete statistics, over 230 new car models were launched in 2025. In 2026, March alone saw nearly 80 auto industry launch events and over 60 new models. This is no longer a matter of automakers' voluntary consideration. When this industry phenomenon becomes routine, they can only passively follow the trend and update, or else lose competitiveness. When a facelift every 6 months and a new generation every year becomes the norm, the direct consequence is that existing owners frequently suffer a decline in experience due to short-cycle updates. Some NEV owners report that their car, only 4 years old, can no longer support the new system because of insufficient computing power of the infotainment chip. When they go to the used car market, dealers bluntly say, although this car is only 4 years old, it's already considered very old. Thus, on one hand, the cliff-like drop in resale value prompts many owners at the 3 to 4 year mark to consider switching cars. Better to trade in early than hold a depreciating asset. On the other hand, rapid updates in smart cockpit and autonomous driving technology weaken the appeal of older models, and young, novelty-seeking consumers are willing to pay for new technology. When an owner discovers just 3 months after taking delivery that the same model has been updated with higher specs and a lower price, this sense of being betrayed inevitably shortens their psychological expectation of keeping the current vehicle. Therefore, the replacement cycle of NEV owners is indeed shorter than that of fuel car owners. Of course, the above analysis is only theoretical and emotional. In reality, we still need to consider the actual economic situation. That is, the replacement decisions of the vast majority of owners are still subject to vehicle depreciation and consumption rhythms. Therefore, the average NEV age of 1.8 years needs to be understood from another angle. As mentioned at the beginning, The explosive growth of China's NEV market is essentially something that happened only in the last 5 years. From 2021 to 2025, the penetration rate of NEVs in China grew explosively, jumping from less than 15% to over 50%, formally entering a market-dominant phase. According to Ministry of Public Security statistics, by the end of 2025, China's NEV park reached 43.97 million units. However, in 2025 alone, retail sales of new energy passenger vehicles were 12.809 million units. That means nearly 30% of the NEVs currently on the road were added just in 2025. It is easy to calculate that at the statistical point. These vehicles generally have an age of less than 1 year. Even among the accumulated park before 2024, most NEVs are only 2 to 3 years old. That is why 90% of vehicles are concentrated in the 1 to 3 year age bracket. Not because NEV owners are really swapping cars frequently, but because the recent surge in new car sales has pulled down the average age. The continuous sales growth of NEVs is compressing and eroding the market share of fuel cars, the 8.2-year average age of traditional fuel. Passenger vehicles and nearly 60% share of vehicles over 7 years old indicate that the fuel car market has entered a stock phase. Thus, new car increments are limited, with a large number of older vehicles remaining on the road. This judgment is also confirmed by the used car market structure. A report shows that the average age of used cars traded in 2025 rose to 8.2 years, up 0.3 years from 7.9 in 2024. Among them, the average age of used fuel cars was 8.6 years, and used NEVs averaged 3.4 years, both slightly up from 2024. Other reports also show that 90% of NEV users have a replacement cycle of less than 5 years. Data from the China Automobile Dealers Association points to 3 to 5 years. Major early EV models are gradually entering a 4 to 6 year replacement cycle. Even amid the fastest technological iteration today, the mainstream replacement rhythm for NEV owners is still every 3 to 5 years. Returning to the original question, do NEV owners replace cars very frequently? The answer is yes. Compared to fuel car owners, they do. But what truly deserves attention is another trend. As early NEVs progressively enter the replacement window, they will also follow the path of fuel cars, shifting from an incremental market to stock competition. How should automakers gain more market share? Should they continue to attract consumers with a fast iteration product logic, or use internal and external trade-in policies to encourage repurchase by both new and existing owners? One thing is certain: betraying existing owners is no longer a viable approach, because the value of an automotive brand is essentially users' attitude toward it, especially as NEV products become seriously homogenized. Making a difference through products alone has become negligible, more often than not. What consumers care about is the brand's character and the deep relationship between automaker and user. NEVs can be oversized electronics, but they are by no means fast-moving consumer goods. How to earn consumers' trust and confidence is what matters most.